This story is called Scry the Crow. Amanda Clegg had a very troubled son. He had quit school and barricaded himself in his room for weeks before madness took hold and seemingly manifested itself in the form of demonic possession. Doctors had no answer for his sudden change in behavior and recommended institutionalization. Amanda's husband and parents were gone. Her siblings lived across the country. It had been just the two of them in that little house at the edge of the park. She was sure a father figure was what her son needed to set him back on the right path. She was at her wit's end when she begged her parish priest to meet with her son. Young Father Falco was one of the last to graduate a North American seminary school with a specialization in exorcism. He came to the house with his deacons and performed the ritual to no avail. The priest continued to meet with the teenager day by day and week by week, until they ultimately disappeared together late one night. The police in the local Catholic parish were of little help. Her son was 17 and left of his own sound mind and body, according to the police anyway. The Monsignor and his staff wanted to keep the issue quiet and told Mrs. Clegg they'd send out their own investigators to look for the pair. In the weeks following her son's disappearance, she hired a private investigator, Jerry Javits, to locate him. Jerry had updated her periodically for months before he ceased communication. During this time, Amanda was racked with guilt, fear, and depression, and even attempted to find her son herself, venturing into the seedy underbellies of nearby towns and cities. The following is the final letter Amanda received before the private eye himself vanished. January 8, 1974. Dear Mrs. Clegg, I found your son. He's living not quite 20 minutes from your front door. Over the past 6 months, I've tracked him from Shenango to Oxnard to Itasca, and finally to Leicestershire. The heretical priest is still with him along with 2 older women. There may be more who've joined the group since. I would like to share as many of the details of his and my wanderings as I've time for. I'm not in the area, actually pretty far from it. I'm sorry I couldn't convey this information to you in person. You'll come to understand why I fear for my safety. I picked up his trail from the bar he frequented in Shenango. The barman heard he was headed north on Route 12, so I followed him from town to town, gas station to gas station, and plenty of folks remembered the priest and specifically your son's hands. He again bears the stigmata. The sheriff near Oxnard was looking for the pair and questioned me when I came to town. 2 of their farm cemeteries had been vandalized. The second apparently held what they were looking for. I found the small tomb they desecrated. It bore a window which they broke, and the deputy at the scene told me they had taken a young boy's skull. For what purpose, I still have no answer. After the Oxnard sighting, I could only find bits and pieces of information regarding them. At some point, 2 older women, sisters apparently, joined your son and the priest. I'm assuming in Itasca, as they were living through the fall and early winter in an abandoned Methodist church on the river. In that chapel, I found a journal full of Indian script and some black books in English. I was able to secure translation of the Indian text at moral and spiritual cost to the translator. It was essential in locating your son and how I was able to find his current quarters. In the forest, northeast of the cemetery in Leicestershire, there is a small shack. I came upon it only by accident as I was tracking their coming and going from the graveyard. I staked out the small clan for weeks before I witnessed their purpose. The following is as accurate as I can describe and interpret from my own eyewitness account. The priest only seemed to assist your son, who was constantly in a state of possession. They kept a number of caged crows for a very specific task. The priest would remove a crow, break its neck, and drop it in its throes. Your son seemed to be reading something of the crow's movements, or its final resting state. Thereby, the group would wait for him to speak in tongues. This would go on until nightfall, when they moved their dark ritual to a corner of the cemetery repeating the crow's sacrifice in Scry. Eventually, they took over a concrete mausoleum with a rusted green door to continue their black mass. When during the day, I attempted to enter the structure, the two women, who I did not see standing watch in the tree line, attacked me with long knives. I was stabbed in my right leg and received stitches to both of my hands at the local clinic. Mrs. Clegg, they knew me by name. They knew I had been following them from the very beginning. Your son is not a 17-year-old boy. There's something much older about the way he speaks, something Indian in him. The priest isn't directing him as we originally thought. Your son, Mrs. Clegg, is gathering followers. For what purpose? I cannot begin to guess. Sincerely, Jerome Javits, P.I.